The White House has confirmed the proposal to load migrant detainees onto shuttles and then drop them off in so-called sanctuary cities. The Washington Post was the first to report on the plan, which was brought up twice by the Trump administration in the past 6 months.
The idea was to create a crisis by overwhelming local resources in cities like San Francisco, the home turf of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. That would send a message to Democrats who have criticized the president. The White House tells CBS News that it was just a suggestion and is no longer under consideration. And they also deny that they were motivated by politics. Nick Miroff is the author of that article and a Washington Post reporter covering immigration and enforcement. Joining us now. Thank you so much, Nick. The White House has confirmed that this idea was actually proposed twice or suggested twice, however you want to, whatever word you want to use. What would have happened had it been approved?
Well, I think the idea here was to, instead of releasing migrant ICE detainees along the border where most of the ICE detention centers are, that they would bus them or transport them in some way to sanctuary cities. There was a specific inquiry from the White House to several attorneys at DHS, at different DHS agencies, all the way back in November after as you remember, when the president was fuming about the caravan, and they wanted to send ICE detainees to small and medium-sized sanctuary cities.
So why was the idea rejected?
Well, I think this idea was pretty much ruled out as soon as it landed at ICE, and they pointed out at the time that that this operationally is not feasible, and that legally there's no basis for doing something like that. The interesting thing is that the White House did not let go of the proposal, and it came back around, and this is what we can point to in terms of kind of pressure that I think DHS officials were feeling. The president demanding that they respond in a tougher way, and the proposal comes back around during the shutdown talks, and that's when both the we know that the legal department at Immigration and Customs Enforcement at ICE actually conducted a review and said definitively, yes, this is not something that we can legally do.
So I think what's so troubling about your reporting is, okay, it's not something that's legal, but the idea that this would be retribution, the idea that people working for the federal government would then be used as a tool to seek political revenge is, I think, the most troubling thing in this story.
That's right. I mean,
and sorry, I said, people working for the federal government, but the migrants who are fleeing, desperate situations are also being used as a tool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's the most problematic about this, at least from a governing standpoint, is the idea that you would interfere in the operations of a law enforcement agency to achieve some kind of political goal. That's certainly the way it was perceived at DHS by the whistleblowers that have reached out to members of Congress that were alarmed by this proposal, particularly when it came back around. And I mean, yes, that's right. I mean, the idea that you would retaliate against Democrats or sanctuary cities by sending ICE detainees to their way was quite shocking.
So ultimately, one of the other points that you've made in your reporting, and it has been reported, is the outsized influence Stephen Miller has on these types of policies. And what's fascinating is now you're starting to see even Republican lawmakers, supporters of the president, sort of saying, hold a minute here, there's this person who's helping build policy who hasn't been elected, nor has he been confirmed by anybody in the Senate. What's going on here?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I think so many of the senior Republican leaders in Congress are alarmed by is, this recent purge at the Department of Homeland Security. And again, we're talking about the White House's own nominee to be the head of ICE, in addition to Secretary Nielsen. And what I think the concern here is that is this perception from the White House that that the DHS leadership was not tough enough? Does it have anything to do with rejecting ideas like this? And it points back to what we've been seeing over a pattern for months now, in which some of the most extreme ideas that are either operationally unworkable or are not legal are continue to be advanced by the White House, and you know, the folks at DHS are coming under a lot of pressure to find ways to accommodate what the White House wants.
Yeah, I think that's what we were seeing with Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, and certainly some of the reporting now is that though, you know, publicly she would often defend the president's policies, privately she would argue, you know, I don't think this is legal. It's probably going to be overturned by the courts, and that is really sort of the source of their clashing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've seen that, I think, again and again, where, you know, the president, his top advisor Stephen Miller, are really eager to you know, to push the envelope as far as they can, but the folks who actually have to implement these policies, and as we will recall with Secretary Nielsen, when she had to kind of stand up and own the zero tolerance family separation policy, you know, they're the ones that actually have to implement these things and to face the legal challenges and face the public backlash. And you know, with this email from the White House, again back in November when they were first floating this idea, one of the responses from the deputy acting director of ICE at the time was, this is you know, PR wise and from a public relations standpoint, this is not going to look good.
All right, Nick Miroff, thank you so much. As always, we appreciate it. Great reporting.
Thank you.